Good morning. This is Joanne Geer. I'm the Executive Director of the Biopharma Research Council, and we are very happy to welcome you to our webinar series, Startup Spin-Offs and Stories. Today's program is going to look at different models from the University of Delaware and from the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation on really developing those relationships to help you work with your tech transfer office. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about our organization. We're a nonprofit association, and our whole purpose is to stimulate collaborations and partnerships. And the key way we do that is by creating opportunities for knowledge sharing and to just work together and have fun together. So we do a lot of webinars, we do physical conferences and symposia, we do roundtables, we have a number of boards and so on. We have about 10,000 in our community, which is largely U.S. but also international because of these programs. I just want to share with you a few of our upcoming programs. We're doing a microbiome update in New Jersey in the beginning of October. Then we go to Durham, North Carolina for the Triangle Biotech Research Symposium. And the theme this year is D3D, Data, Drugs, Diagnostics. In the beginning of November, we have a 2-day conference on companion diagnostics. November 17th, we're doing something for the first time, which is the Regional Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Expo. And we're looking for all kinds of collaboration on that if that intrigues you. It's in New Jersey. And we do have one date for 2017. We've done the Internet of Medical Things twice, focusing on cybersecurity in connected devices and in hospitals, and this year it's going to look at the entire connected system. So that's next July 27th in Princeton, New Jersey. And you'll find more on our website, of course. You may enter questions throughout the day throughout the hour on your questions panel on the right. And one question I always get is, are the slides going to be available? And the answer to that is yes. It takes us a little time to get the recording and the slides on our website, and then we will send you a note. And yes, we are on Twitter, so if you'd like to follow us, you're welcome to do so, and if you'd like to tweet us questions, you're welcome to do so. Thank you. Great, and I'm now going to introduce you to Neha Nigam, who is in the, she's a tech transfer fellow in the Office of Research Communication at Rutgers, commercialization at Rutgers University. Neha, take it away.
Thanks, Joanne, and welcome everyone to this interesting webinar on startup spin-offs and stories. I'm myself a scientist by training who got interested into the commercialization process of discoveries coming out of the universities, and therefore I took this career path which was honestly unknown to me till the time I was in my PhD. Today we aim to address how these academic tech transfer offices have evolved in their approach towards assisting entrepreneurs and scientists in establishing a startup business or licensing this technology for better commercialization purposes. Our experts in the field, Manu Nair and Joy Goswami, will be guiding us through this. The idea is that we take this webinar as sort of guidance points towards understanding each other's role, as in the scientist's role and the tech transfer professional's role in commercializing the technology and ensuring that both parties have satisfied each other and sort of are excited about entering a win-win relationship. So without further ado, I will introduce you to our speakers. Manu Nair is the Vice President of Tech Ventures at the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, and he's in charge of developing and commercializing the OMRF's technologies, establishing strategic industry collaborations, and managing the innovation fund that is dedicated to such development efforts. He started his tech transfer career at OMRF in 2004 and has been involved in the IP protection and commercialization and startup company efforts. He later joined the Mayo Clinic Ventures, and now he serves as a business consultant and advisor to several U.S. international entities, including prominent research institutes and technology companies. Our second speaker, Joy Goswami, is Assistant Director of the Office of Economic Innovation and Partnerships at the University of Delaware. So we have two very interesting people coming from a research foundation and a academic university, and I therefore would like you to sort of look at the nuances of the differences in the way these two offices work. Joy Goswami is actively involved in managing IP and establishing new startups and spin-offs and bringing forth university industry collaborations and partnerships. He's also an NIH, SBIR, STTR reviewer and has more than 12 years of experience in this field. Throughout his career, he has produced highly regarded commercialization strategies and outreach practices of novel technologies. So let's get on with hearing these two interesting people, and the first one to go on is Manu Nair.
Thank you, Neha, and Joanne, I appreciate you giving the opportunity to talk to the group, and good morning everyone, and I hope that you can see my slides. Trying to switch, I apologize. Okay, so once again, you know, this topic that we are having a discussion about today is a pretty vast topic, and as you can imagine, reaching a so-called marital bliss between entrepreneurs and tech transfer offices is something that we can talk for hours, but I've got 20 minutes, so what I'm trying to basically do here is to discuss the few different things. One is, of course, I will be introducing the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation to you, not just because I'm actually representing Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, but also because you've got two entirely different kind of institutions represented here today in this webinar. And Joy and I come from two different, institutions with two different cultures and nature. So it is important to most probably see the differences so that you can understand how those cultural differences can play in driving technology commercialization goals in different directions. And also then I would like to switch and talk a little bit about some maybe common sense, topics that you might actually want to think about when you're looking at technology commercialization opportunities to decide whether a technology commercialization opportunity is appropriate for a startup versus another, kind of technology commercialization avenue. And addressing that up front is an important aspect because that actually increases the chances of success. Even if you're basically trying to commercialize a technology in the form of a startup, you need to think about it like that. So let me introduce you to the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, or OMRF, briefly. We were established in 1946 and was inaugurated by Dr. Alexander Fleming, who discovered penicillin, of course. And we were basically supported by philanthropy and, grant funding through endowment. And we quickly realized that we don't have the resources or the capabilities to focus on everything under the sun, so we focused on things that people did not do in those days to carve a niche, and quickly started focusing on lupus and became the National Center of Excellence for Autoimmune Disease Research designated by NIH, focusing on lupus, Sjogren's, multiple sclerosis, and RA. And, we have got everything from bench to clinic and huge biorepositories of patient samples for research purposes here, maybe one of the largest in the space of lupus and Sjogren's, and also in MS. We also focus in other areas of research. Again, even though the list that you see are very broad topics, we are focused on certain aspects of these topics. For example, in cardiovascular biology and coagulation, we focus on blood disorders and vascular leakage. And in aging and metabolism disorders, we basically focus on mitochondrial dysfunction. So it is not everything in those topics. We basically are focused on certain niche areas. My group that I lead, which is basically Technology Ventures, is the one-stop shop for all industry activities or commercialization activities. And we have structured it like that for a specific reason, because we are a small research foundation and we are compared to big universities, and we have the ability to basically put all of these things that you see on the slide on under one roof. And also it helps us see a band or broad range of things that are in the technology commercialization or industrial relations perspective that we can build relationships starting with one and maybe establishing other collaborations and relationships with the same partner. So it helps us understand what the needs are, see different kinds of things, and build several permutations and combinations. But in a larger institution, it is not practical to do that. They actually have to separate technology commercialization from sponsored research or clinical trial facilitation. But we are able to do this, and as Neha mentioned, we also have a seed capital fund of close to $1 million that we basically deploy to early stage technology development. And also, we are in charge of spin-off company formation. What makes our office probably unique are the two last two components listed in the slides. That is strategic collaborations management and institutional business development. And when I say strategic collaboration management, we actually have international collaborators that we work with to not only to advance our research through synergistic capabilities, but also to advance technologies by working with them in commercializing their technologies and ours in a joint fashion, and we basically manage that internally here. And also, since we are not in a biotech hub like a San Francisco or Boston, we have to do institutional business development to make people aware of the fact that good science is geography agnostic, and you can actually have good science come from any place. And a lot of times we have to tell that story, and it's not like being in the San Francisco biotech hub. So those are kinds of things that we handle from our office. We have been very successful in technology commercialization. Again, you see some of our successes. We've got 3 drugs in the market. Alexion Pharmaceuticals, which is now a $32 billion company, was one of our startup companies. Solaris is actually our drug that has roots in OMRF. C-Protein by Baxter, Zygos by Eli Lilly, Vectra DA, the first diagnostic for rheumatoid arthritis related patient response of drugs, was actually was developed here, and Crescendo Biosciences was our startup company. So I just wanted to show some of our successes here, and that's all of these have come out of OMRF research and development. Now, I just actually want to talk briefly about some of the undiscussed realities with regards to technology commercialization, because today's discussion is primarily about entrepreneurial side or spin-off side of technology commercialization. But there are some common sense questions and evaluation criteria that are important in evaluating the technology opportunity and in deciding whether you are on a right commercialization path for a technology, because it is important for a long-term success of the institution's technology transfer operation, and also for creating a healthy family of spin-off companies with your technology commercialization portfolio. So I want to highlight some of the guiding principles relating to technology commercialization in general, and of course it applies to startup company as an avenue for technology commercialization, and how I have seen this play and help successful TTOs or technology transfer offices in getting a better success rate. So let's actually look at the couple of slides, and I just actually always tell people that technology commercialization portfolio is like a mutual fund. You have to have different things in there, like licenses versus startup companies versus maybe IP monetization, because the diverse the portfolio is, the better the opportunity for success. And spin-offs is actually an avenue for technology commercialization, and not the avenue or the only avenue. And if you think of it like that, then the advantage is that you will get to bet on better technologies for startup companies, if startup companies are the avenue that that you're basically trying to pursue, or a startup company is an avenue that you're trying to pursue for a technology, you get to basically pick the winners because you're not under any pressure to build too many startup companies. So you have to look at your portfolio in general and understand if you are having the right balance, and you need to basically look at it like a hedge fund. And don't start a startup company just because you cannot find a licensee. I've seen this happen because some of my experience in the past, where I've actually seen people do this, where they don't want to have a difficult conversation with their investigators, or they basically do not want to, they want to get something off the plate. They start a company and forget the fact that it's actually a waste of time or your effort to start a company like that. Maybe the best way is to maybe have a conversation with your investigators to further develop the technology or move away from it. So that is something to think about in a technology evaluation to make a startup company successful. And also, you need to think about whether a straight license versus a spin-off is appropriate for a technology, because sometimes licensing to a mid-sized company may get you to a success faster than a spin-off, and we will have to evaluate that at the time. But once you have decided to basically start a company, then you also need to remember and keep in your mind that it is a significant commitment to start a company on the part of a TTO. It's like sending a kid to college. Just because you just send a kid to college doesn't mean that your responsibilities end, and kids always come back to you for help. Technology transfer offices are always approached by startup companies of theirs for support and help. And so one of the key components that you remember is that, again, not all inventors are entrepreneurs. And we have to think about that, because if you're basically having an inventor come in and say, I want to basically start a company, you need to think if that particular person who you may know or you may have the opportunity to do a due diligence is the right person to basically start a company, or how can he basically interact with the startup company to make it successful. So it's a hard conversation to have, but it is a conversation that you need to have to make it successful, because management is the most important thing of a startup company in its early stage, because technologies can fail and people take risks because they are basically investing in good management of people when it comes to money being invested. Also, one last point that I always try to tell my friends in tech transfer is that there is a high probability that your successful spin-offs may leave, and people tend to not accept that. And if you are in a place where the technology the company doesn't have the kind of resources required or financial resources or management resources required to expand it beyond a certain perspective, let the company go to a place where it can be successful, so that your technologies are commercialized, it actually reaches people, and you basically get to reap the returns. So be prepared for that, because that is something that I've seen play again and again in tech transfer field, because they want to keep companies in certain geographic locations or things like that. That sometimes doesn't work. So it's something that need to be in the back of tech transfer minds. And going to the next slide, once you basically have a technology transfer relationship built with a startup company, with an entrepreneur, I've seen I wanted to show some examples of some of the common complaints that entrepreneurs usually, pose to, tech transfer offices, and say, here is actually what, or bring back to tech transfer offices and try to find a resolution of. I always try to put these into two buckets. One is actually category 1 complaints that can be addressed by some education of the entrepreneur, because it's based on misunderstanding. Then there are category 2 complaints that can be addressed only by prompt action on the part of technology transfer offices. the category 1 complaint, and this is not an exhaustive list, I'm just trying to basically throw some common ones I've seen. Sometimes, entrepreneurs come to us and say, I worked with another institution, the other institution did it, why can't you agree to these kind of terms? The answer that I usually try to give is that we are not all the same. And this comes back to the question of, are tech transfer offices or are institutions all built in the same nature and culture mold? They are not. The nature and culture of an institution drives its commercialization objectives. And, in my mind, I put 3 general buckets for institutions that deal in, academic institutions and tech transfer. One is, the universities that actually have a mission of basically bring in, of academia or teaching, and have to have the needs of recruiting faculty and staff and bring in students and basically creating an environment of education, versus the second bucket of small research institutions or mid-sized research institutions that are private, like the OMRF, that actually do not have a teaching objective. The objective is biomedical research, and scientific dissemination, versus the third bucket of the Mayo Clinics or the Cleveland Clinics that are medical hospitals associated, that are in research and tech transfer, whose goals are basically driven by the need for them to be at the cutting edge of technologies. And they are trying to basically increase their patient base. They're trying to bring better technologies to their patients and be have the reputation of basically being the best place for their patients, where the best treatment is obtained. So all of these drive technology commercialization in different directions. For a place like OMRF, we basically see it, we are not supported by the state funding, we basically see it as tech transfer as an avenue to generate returns, like a financial business, where we can actually, we want to have patient benefit, we want our technologies to be successful, but the returns basically come back to our endowment and our research that actually furthers the goal of and mission of research. So the way that we are decides how we basically deal with tech transfer, and so we cannot most probably all agree on the same things. Another thing that I usually hear is, why can't you give me the same deal that I got the last time? It's a very simple answer. You're buying apples versus oranges. So, you will have to have that conversation about fair market value calculations. And I always hear, TTO folks only watch out for their interests. That is not correct, because unless you are successful as the conversation that we need to have is, unless the tech transfer, the spin-off company is successful, tech transfer people or tech transfer team is not going to be successful, because we are economically aligned in interest. So that's a discussion that can help solve that issue. Again, in category 2 complaints that require TTO action, the most common complaint sometimes that I hear is that, what did you get me into? It is impossible to work with your PI. It's a very important point, because technology transfer offices are the gatekeepers and matchmakers of technologies and businesses. And it is important to basically have a discussion about, it's important to know who you can work with, and it's more important to know who you cannot work with. All PIs are not collaborative. It is not because they're bad people, because they don't understand sometimes the pressures and requirements of starting a company or technology commercialization. So it is important to basically have an upfront conversation and try to basically avoid deals that won't work if the PIs involved are not somebody that can actually understand the pressures of technology commercialization. And I personally have experience with this. I've been in this business long enough, and it can create a lot of heartburn and a lot of basically time consumption on the part of tech transfer, as well as the entrepreneur, and it's a lot of wasted time. Also, I do not get a lot of support from institutions TTO. That can only be resolved by a responsive TTO that can actually work closely with entrepreneurs and be responsive to their needs. as I mentioned, startup companies basically require a lot of TTO support, and the level of support is usually dependent on the experience of the management. So management is again a point that I want to come to, because if you have good management, you basically will require less support, but be prepared to basically support and be responsive to to spin-off companies' needs until they can start running. Then again, we hear sometimes, you did not tell me this, so this is a conversation that happens maybe 5 years down or 3 years down the line. And so it is important to keep good records and notes to avoid a perception of any misrepresentation or underrepresentation, because you have to be fully transparent in your deals. And and if both parties know what can be done and what cannot be done, then there is actually a easy way to get to a solution, as well as have difficult conversations downstream. And finally, I usually hear TTOs are slow and non-responsive. I understand that many TTOs are understaffed and under-resourced. So it is important to be prompt and responsive, because many times the complaints are geared towards what I call a black hole problem, where you send information and you don't hear anything back. Communication is key. So be prompt and responsive and communicate with your startup companies. Over communication is not an issue, under communication is. And if you actually think that you can meet certain goals only in a certain time, set client expectations and deadlines, and that will surely help you with building good relationship. I'm reaching to the last 2 slides, and I just want to show what kind of startup mechanisms that are available here in Oklahoma that we basically provide. We work closely with 2 organizations. One is called I2E, or Innovation to Enterprise, which is a nonprofit organization that actually has a venture capital fund associated with it. But that organization helps do what we call a venture assessment program for startup companies, for entrepreneurs. They use the Steve Blank's Lean Launchpad model to evaluate the opportunity and understand if it is a feasible commercialization opportunity from a startup. And they also have an investment fund associated with that. They help entrepreneurs write business plans. Again, the second organization is the Oklahoma Center for Advancement of Science and Technology. They run a pre-SBIR STTR grant program that actually helps entrepreneurs to basically have a pseudo grant submission mechanism, where they train, they review the grants, they basically bring national reviewers and prepare it for an SBIR grant that can actually have a higher hit rate or success rate. And they also have non-dilutive funding of grant funding that is available for startup companies in various formats that range from $40,000 to $300,000. And from an OMRF perspective, we also try to help our startup companies by networking and relationships. For example, we conducted a OMRF BioVenture Forum in 2015, brought major venture capitalists, 40 of them, into Oklahoma City, did an event for a day, networking, and deals have actually materialized based on that. So these are kinds of things that are available. And we also, finally, have a technology incubator. This is actually what I call an active incubator versus a passive incubator, where in passive incubators you're trying to train people to basically start companies and support them, versus in an active incubator what you're trying to basically do is provide a home for the technologies and the management associated with that, so that you can have a portfolio company run like from that incubator. So what we did is we brought experienced management, recruited them from different parts of the country, and we created this accelerator incubator. We helped raise $10 million in an investment fund that is affiliated with our technology transfer operation, and they manage under the name of Excel Biopharma. There are now 4 portfolio companies, 1 in phase 2, others getting close to clinic. And these are basically focused on the space of therapeutics. The goal is to basically incubate the company in the accelerator, managed by experienced management, take it to a point where you can actually then get a significant infusion of investment from a major venture capital group or a strategic pharmaceutical company, at that point of time, the company will graduate from the accelerator. We will have additional technology put into it. So it's the $10 million investment fund is geared towards that. That money that is spent on development now then becomes equity in the company in the significant round. So that is something that is available. You can see that on Excel Biopharma's website if you want to take a look at it. And that's all that I have today, and I know that I may have gone over time. I apologize, Joy, but this is a vast topic, but I was trying to cover as much as I can. Appreciate it.
Hello?
Hello, you are now unmuted, Joy, and I just want to suggest anyone who has questions to feel free to enter them into the question box on your dashboard. There you go. Thank you, Joy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joanne and Neha, for introducing me, and Manu for doing this excellent presentation prior to me that kind of sets the stage at which I want to take this discussion about entrepreneurs and academic tech transfer offices, how they are striving to achieve a win-win relationship. This topic is basically addressed at the evolution that tech transfer offices have taken up in recent times towards assisting entrepreneurs in establishing their startup businesses around novel technologies that come from these academic setups. And the evolution has primarily happened on the presumption that startups are a great potential for generic and generating economic growth for the state and bringing novel technologies to the marketplace. This topic does seem pertinent, and if this was a live webinar, I would probably go ahead and ask for a show of hands to figure out what my audience looks like, but I'm presuming that having seen the topic, most of you are either thinking of beginning an entrepreneurship or are serial entrepreneurs yourself or work in a tech transfer office, and if you are neither of them, I sure hope that after listening to our talk, you will consider becoming one of them. What we plan to achieve, and let me see if I can move the slide here, in this particular session, and my particular talk here is to discuss a little bit about the interface, where the two entities meet, that is the entrepreneurs and the tech transfer offices. Talk a little bit about the evolution that has happened in tech transfer offices, how there's been a shift in the paradigm, discuss about entrepreneurs and what kind of homework they need to do before they get to a discussion with tech transfer offices, talk about this nifty vehicle of exchange of technology called licensing, discussing a little bit about what entrepreneurs can expect from tech transfer offices in addition to just getting licenses and acquisition of the technology, discuss a little bit about a few success stories and why universities have been successful, particularly the one that I'm associated with, and for the benefit of those that listen to this talk and find it very intriguing and want to hop onto the bandwagon of becoming a tech transfer professional, they have career opportunities that they can delve into, and that's the next that we can discuss to end the topic. A little bit about the affiliation that I'm with, University of Delaware, and just to let you know that unlike Manu, this university that I'm associated with is an academic setup. It's can be considered as an iconic mid-sized university that does not have a medical center. So we have most of the science and technology happening around engineering, business, agriculture, chemical, biomolecular engineering, chemistry, biochemistry, and likewise. And most of the technologies that come into our office belong to this space. University of Delaware is also colloquially called UD. It is the largest university in Delaware. It has, of course, a teaching component and a research component. The teaching component comprises of 23,000 undergraduate and graduate students, And the research component is with nearly $200 million of externally sponsored research that we receive into the university, which eventually churns out a reasonable amount of invention disclosure that becomes our starting point. Statistics show that it takes nearly $1.5 to $3 million of basic research to generate one invention, and we are in the ballpark with receiving about 50 to 70 invention disclosures every year. This is a slide that you would have seen with many speakers, and it kind of discusses a little bit about the workflow of what conventional tech transfer offices do on a regular basis. The invention disclosures I spoke about are the starting point where faculty come to us, knock at our door and says that we would want to see whether we can end up commercializing those technologies. We take a quick look at it, evaluate it, and in most cases go ahead and file a patent around it. After filing which, we do a licensing strategy and we try to put technologies in the appropriate buckets. But one of the classifications is where most of the disruptive technologies that we take a look at, which means technologies that have the potential to yield a range of products in a variety of new markets, are put into the bucket that would be allocated for potential startups. Once we do that, we go ahead and delve into one of the most important and probably the hardest part of activities, which is marketing. This is where we take these technologies, dumb it down, package it into informational marketing sheets, where we try to make these technologies give a value proposition, what we call the cheaper, faster, better methodology, and then we post it for public display. And the usual display that we use are university web portals, from where it gets spidered into various different portals that somebody who would want to take an access and look at it can review. These include the Global Technology Portal that AUTM, the Association of University Technology Managers, hosts, iBridge that is hosted by the Kauffman Foundation, Flintbox that is hosted by a company called Wellspring. So anyone who is interested to take a look at these technologies, these novel technologies which presumably have a patent around it, are accessible for public viewing. And if there is any company or any startup that is interested in taking a look at these and wishes to express an interest to build up a company around it, it's then that they come and knock at our door. Now this is the meeting point, that is item 5 that I've expressed here, is where startups, potential startups come and they express an interest to take the technology away. And this is one of the most critical areas where companies want to talk to us, and it is almost vital to make sure that the discussions and communications that happen between the startup at this particular juncture is of paramount benefit to both these parties, that is the Technology Transfer Office and the startup company. And why is it important? Because Manu, the way he mentioned it, it is a marital bliss. And we get into an engagement where if expectations match and everything is coherent with what the Tech Transfer Office wants and the startup is interested to move forward with, we get into a negotiation and sign a license deal. So this is a conventional chart that shows what it takes for a technology to begin as an invention disclosure and close as a license deal, and many events that happen in the middle are what eventually makes the technology worthwhile for a startup to pick it up. Needless to mention, aside from startups, some technologies are picked up by small companies or medium or large companies, and the Technology Transfer Office usually has various options as to where they would want to share the technology for it to get commercialized. While the process of the marital bliss happens, it is critical for both the parties, that is the tech transfer office and the startup company, to realize that the communication has to be complete. So in due course, and arguably tech transfer offices have been around in the US since the 1990s, there has been a general understanding that tech transfer offices are very difficult to work with, and it's extremely hard for startups to get acquisition to these technologies. And both parties, which is the technology transfer offices and the startup companies, have gone a long way since the 1980s. And currently, we feel that we are probably at a point where both the parties understand each other because of better communication and because of better understanding of both the parties and how they want to move forward with technologies. One of the biggest evolutionary change that tech transfer offices have taken themselves upon is to realize that startups are cash poor to begin with. They don't have the money, and it is absolutely impossible and inappropriate and unethical to try and squeeze them for money at the time when the company is still in its incipience. So there is usually an understanding that startups would want to take acquisition of a technology by way of a license deal where the upfronts are not as much, but they would probably be willing to share some of their profits at the time when they are successful. The belief is that when the startup becomes successful, the tech transfer is also considered successful. So they've moved a long way from where it started off in the 1980s, where tech transfer offices were considered to be revenue generating or the profit making units of universities, and right now where they're considered to be offices that help the public interest and public good and are judged upon not typically only by revenue generation. This is a piece that came out from the APLU and the AAUs, where recommendations were sent to the universities on the philosophy at which tech transfer offices should work, and has been uniquely and by far overwhelmingly appreciated by universities to pick it up. So the discussions would not be complete until the entrepreneur does his homework. So in order for the expression of interest to happen, tech transfer offices need to understand what entrepreneurs are really wanting to get from the technology, that they could potentially give it to the company or they could give it to somebody else who may be a better potential for licensing the technology and commercializing it. So entrepreneurs need to do quite a bit of homework, and before they come and approach the university to acquire the technology, they have to make sure that they have made everything available to the tech transfer office that makes the technology of some value to the company. What is the motivation that eventually led the person who wants to start up the business to start the business? Is the patent all that they would need? What exactly is the invention that is being talked about? Does the startup company have enough information about the market fit? Has he done enough analysis about what is required for the technology to be commercialized, because it is an early stage technology to begin with? Does the entrepreneur know about the market well enough? Does he understand what kind of market trends are going on? And once this kind of homework is done by the entrepreneur, they would usually draft their business plan and then come and meet with the tech transfer office. Because at the outset, the tech transfer office, when they start the discussion with the company, would want to get all the information out to make a judgment as to whether this is the right prospect for the technology to get commercialized. So if everything goes well, there is a license that happens, and a license deal is basically an agreement that happens between the entrepreneur and the startup, where the startup agrees to invest and develop the technology and also agrees to pay back some of their profits if and when they are successful, based on which license considerations are made, and the two entities shake hands, and voila, the technology is up for grabs and it's been taken over by the startup company to develop. Now, where are we at? A situation where the technology is with the startup company. But is the startup company in a position to be able to commercialize the technology without any further assistance? And the answer is no. Because if tech transfer officers believe that they have done the job by licensing the technology away, they also do realize that all startup companies need to eventually take the technology and carry it all the way through to take it to the point where it is commercially available to the marketplace. And to do so, a startup company, which is usually, as I said, cash-strapped, needs a lot of additional competencies. Now, where does that competency come from? Is the startup capable of generating these competencies? And it has been generally regarded as something that startups are usually lean about. So tech transfer offices have evolved in due course to get themselves to a situation where they are now trying to assist entrepreneurs in aspects beyond simply providing the license agreements. Some of these aspects include stuff like assisting them with business consulting, assisting them with patent management, giving them help in partnership development, assistance with legal help, also providing them with human resource help or developing their team, giving them assistance in some level of funding, either angel or venture or gap funding, or alternatively helping them with getting incubator space like Manu has indicated in his previous discussions. So the buck doesn't stop for the tech transfer offices at the point where the license is consummated. It historically used to be, but it is not something that is eventually happening nowadays, because tech transfer offices are trying to build their competencies beyond just providing license agreements. And that is a big help for startup companies. And if anybody in the audience is interested to try and acquire technology from a university, it only helps to go to the university and ask for additional help. Oftentimes they would eventually end up providing the help that they would need, and at an obviously concessional rate, because they realize the fact that the companies are cash-strapped. So what has my particular office done? It has joined hands with two other entities called the Small Business Development Center and the Technology Park, which is the incubator. The Small Business Center is an entity that provides a lot of assistance with small business to start business around technologies that are funded by the Small Business Administration, SBA. The counseling that they provide to potential startups are all free of cost and goes a long way in how the startup can eventually end up using those technologies. So in the existence of our office, which has happened in the last virtually 7 years now, we have been very successful in trying and providing all kinds of assistance to the entrepreneurs beyond just licensing the technologies. And in doing so, we have accrued a lot of understanding as to where we can provide potential startups with such assistance. It's obviously beyond the capability of this particular presentation to discuss all these aspects, but I've just picked up one which we can discuss here, and that is about funding. So if you take a look at this graph on the left, you'll see that a typical trajectory that a startup company takes is where it starts with a survival mode. And at the bottom, you'll see the kind of funding that the startup company goes through during its trajectory. So when it is in the survival mode, it has founders, family, and friends to siphon money for it to help. Nothing much that the transfer offices can do. But then beyond that survival mode, when it starts to get in some cash flows, comes in the role of the angels. And if you take a look at the right, tech transfer offices are assisting entrepreneurs in getting them connected to angel investors. Beyond that point, where they start making a little bit of profit but not a whole lot, the products are launched, there is an exponential growth phase that startups want to get into, but they are cash strapped because none of the venture funding would be provided to them until they are at the point where they're making profits. Hence, there is what we call a valley of death, and technology transfer offices assist in startups in providing all kinds of funding opportunities at the point where they are really looking for money and growing. These kind of funding can revolve around gap funding, which many tech transfer offices are now trying to put in together. They can provide resources like student funding, provide senior design programs, or assist with some of the federal grants that come from SBIR and STTR. And finally, when they are at the point where they are making profits, it can eventually move towards assisting them with getting venture funding so that they can stand on their own feet. Such opportunities could be harbored by asking for help from the tech transfer offices, or many times these offices are funded from federal agencies to put these programs together. One that the OEIP, and that is the office that I'm involved in, does is listed on our website, where it provides assistance by way of an SBIR resource program, where we try and coach potential startups in getting to write and win SBIR grants. The other one is called the Spin-In program, where we put together student groups to try and accelerate a technology from level 1 to bring it to level 2. And what the students would get would be in-kind match by way of credits, but the startup eventually gets a lot of benefit from that, in that they get the technologies to a more refined and more marketable stage after it comes out of the Spin-In program. Quickly touching upon some of the success stories here, one of the success stories that we have had is a company by the name of SimuCare. This is a company that has been developed roughly a year ago around novel simulation devices for educational need to medical practitioners. The inventors, Amy Copperthwaite, who is to the right of me, and I'm, by the way, in the middle, is one who came to our office with an invention disclosure. We filed patents around the invention that she had and generated a portfolio of patents, and went ahead and licensed the patents to the company, which was called SimuCare. We then provided them counseling for business startups, did the registration of the company, put together a team for the Spin-In program, provided her university gap funds, and finally helped her to get some more proof of concept fund from outside agencies. At this point in time, Amy has its first product launched. It's called SimuTrack. It's a device that is meant to be for patients that have had tracheostomy, and the sale of the product is happening both nationally and internationally. So it's in some respects touching upon all the aspects of competencies that our office has generated, right from the invention disclosure to the point that we have been able to help her with funding and getting whatever she needs to bring it, the technology to the marketplace. There are similar success stories also, one of which is called the GenPro. Again, I don't want to go into great detail, but the point of fact is that one of the inventors, who is shown on the right here, Adam Marsh, came here with an invention disclosure to make novel epigenetic biomarkers. And the technology has been taken all the way through where it's a commercial product right now and is sold in markets. We are still assisting the company in every respect that we can to make them stand on their feet and get some cash flow in. What we have seen from reports from 1990 through date is that there have been a whopping number of university startups, somewhere in the range of 5,000, happening from academic university setup, which is huge. Our office has kind of built upon its resources around the competency that I just mentioned, and having done that, we have had a reasonably large number of startups that have formed. And part of the reason is all the value add that we eventually provide to potential startups. This particular year, if you look at the Association of University Technology Managers licensing activity survey, you'll find that there have been 914 startups formed, which is up by 11.7% in the year 2014 when the last survey was done. So there has been a lot of changes happening in the global market here in the US regarding technology transfer and the way universities are approaching tech transfer, in that these are eventually turning out to be success stories for both parties. Much of it is, of course, like I mentioned, at the interface, where the discussions happen in a way that is conducive for both parties. So to end my discussion here, I would like to quickly bring about the fact that, and I'm sure Manu is going to echo here, that we have both been trained and have gotten education where technology transfer was not something we were groomed to become. Like Neha mentioned earlier before the discussion, started that she hadn't even known about it until she started talking and doing her PhD program. But I do want to mention the fact that technology transfer has been one of the most rewarding and overwhelmingly successful areas of career development for me, and I'm sure many of my colleagues as well. And for the benefit of those members in the audience today that are interested to delve into getting out of what they're doing and probably seek for a newer career, tech transfer is a great opportunity for them to look into what is needed to become a successful tech transfer professional, aside from, of course, having a personality which should be nice and calming and communicative. That they need to have a background in science, they should have some business savviness and a little bit background about law. And if you have these ingredients and you have the fire and the belly to move forward, I believe it's going to be a very rewarding career for you if you ever want to move on. Like I mentioned, this is a discussion that was talked in a very superficial level, but and I tried to address a lot of topics at one time. Maybe I didn't go very deep into it, but I do want to open up any questions for the audience that they may have for me or Manu, and also mention that here's my address. If anybody is interested to talk to me offline, discuss anything in more detail, I would be more than happy and willing to do so. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. We have some great questions, but I wanted to let Neha begin. If you have some questions you'd like to start with.
Sure. Thanks, Manu and Joy, for the interesting talks and for delving into some of the topics that I have to honestly admit I also did not know, having been in the tech transfer office. So thank you so much for the very informative talks. I just wanted to, I know that Joy briefly touched upon some of the successful startups and technologies coming out of OEIP, but I just wanted to sort of get an idea about if you had to give a percentage of the kind of technologies that have been successful in terms of devices, medical devices, therapeutics, diagnostics, or physical sciences, would you be able to sort of give us a percentage of which area has been the most successful, and probably, if possible, why?
Yeah, Neha, just to answer, I think generally, like I mentioned, the feedstock for us to move forward is very much dependent on the starting point, which is the invention disclosures. Now, it just does so happen that University of Delaware is #1 in physical therapy in the world. And so we get a lot of invention disclosure around physical therapy. Mm-hmm. And we have been, for the most part, successful in trying and starting businesses and licensing technologies around that area. Developing, for instance, technologies around Parkinson's disease, some devices, medical devices that are helping children that have ambulatory issues to walk and move around. So in some respects we are sort of strapped by the length and breadth of the kind of research that goes on here in the university. Mm-hmm. But in general, because of course we don't have a medical school, we are not as much sort of up to speed with what it would be in terms of the pharmaceutical drug development or therapeutic technologies, only because, again, that would be something that would probably come from the School of Biological Sciences, if anything. So in general, we've done a good job, I think, in terms of churning out inventions to startups or licensing them to companies. But we are, I think our depth is confined to what, or the kind of technologies we eventually get from the university.
Mm-hmm.
So, Neha, from our perspective, I hope that you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So, from my perspective, actually, I'm going to basically put it in two separate sections. One at OMRF, and I can also talk a little bit about my experience at Mayo Clinic. The OMRF is actually a very focused biomedical research institution that does nothing but therapeutics and diagnostics. Mm-hmm. So all of our technology portfolio, 99% of it is geared towards therapeutics and diagnostics. And if you go back to my slides, you will see all the startup companies are basically in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And since we only have certain areas of research that are like basically 4 areas of research, I cannot basically say that one area is actually stronger than the other with regards to invention disclosures, but having said that, we tend to see more from our cardiovascular biology, coagulation, and autoimmunity groups than the other groups, but not because the strength is less there, but the focus of, for example, immunobiology and cancer that actually is has a functional genomics and a cell cycle biology component to it is very basic than a little bit more towards the advanced applied side. So we tend to have a bias towards coagulation, cardiovascular biology, and autoimmunity technology inventions, and our successes primarily have been in that space, and that's one of the things. In the Mayo Clinic, and Joy mentioned an important aspect, that maybe in a medical center it may be different. It is very interesting to maybe look at an institution like Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic because it is a medical center, and it is biased more towards researchers or who are clinicians who are basically in clinically applied research than basic research. You tend to see more of the portfolio being weighted towards medical devices and diagnostics. Diagnostics is probably a Mayo Clinic specific phenomenon compared to many of the other medical centers, because Mayo has a business unit called the Mayo Medical Laboratories that is actually the 3rd largest diagnostic laboratory in the world after after LabCorp and Quest. So they actually run it as it's a $1 billion business. But what I'm trying to get at is it is weighted more towards things that immediately apply towards patients, like diagnostics, medical devices, and also healthcare IT, and or what I call things that improve patient care from a information technology perspective. And the portfolio is less weighted towards therapeutics because the focus of the institution from a technology, not just a commercialization perspective, research perspective, is geared towards clinical applied translational research. So you tend to see differences, and from our technology commercialization stories, we have been wildly successful in the therapeutics and diagnostic space.
Mm-hmm. Sure, thank you. Joanne, can I ask other questions, or do we want to take the audience?
I think I'm going to say that yes, you should, and there are some great questions in the queue, and I'm actually going to send them to our panelists. There aren't so many that it will be onerous, but I'll send you the questions, and if you'd like to send a response back, I think that the folks would enjoy it. There's several people that are putting several questions. You may be able to address them all at once. But go ahead, Neha. We'll go through one more round, and then we'll adjourn.
Sure. Manu, you mentioned in your talk that you mentioned some of the complaints that happen within the tech transfer office or the scientists have towards the TTO. So I just wanted to understand, does the office have a method for reviewing the progress that you and your colleagues make in commercialization efforts? And of course, in this case, I don't mean just in terms of the revenue generation, but are there other methods and ways of determining or reviewing the progress, and whether other points to sort of look at it? Yeah.
Absolutely, and let me correct my statement a little bit because of the difference in the nature of our institution. I would like to correct the term scientists to entrepreneurs, because a lot of our scientists are not entrepreneurs, because the way that our institution is structured is that a lot of our scientists are not interested in taking a front row seat or basically driving the car with regards to startup companies, but they are always, liking to support the startup companies in whatever form or fashion they can, even in the role of maybe a scientific advisor, or basically having a participation in the spin-off company from a scientific role than be a CEO or COO. So primarily my discussions that I did today regarding communication issues or complaints are geared towards any entrepreneur who basically wants to start a company associated with our technology, and these are not every entrepreneur, but basically what I've heard consistently, not from here, not just from OMRF, but also from my experience at Mayo Clinic, it's a common theme that some of the stuff that I mentioned are common themes because, they are repeat entrepreneurs or what I call serial entrepreneurs who basically come to another tech transfer office after having a successful exit, and then, for example, they expect the same relationship that they had with the University of North Carolina to basically have that with Mayo Clinic. Doesn't actually work. So we do have a mechanism internally to evaluate successes in the sense that the matrices are, based on, for example, we have a turnaround time for agreements. We basically have, ours is a smaller office, so it's actually easier to keep tab of these things. And, basically, for example, if there is a material transfer agreement with regards to our office, we have a 5-day turnaround time. We try to basically, try to, and successfully, we have been on a 3-day turnaround time. But it's within a week we have to basically do that. We try to set expectations with regards to turnaround time for reviewed agreements, and those are kinds of things, matrices that we maintain. And on top of that, it is also a culture that you build within the institution and organization that you tell, and you actually have a continued communication and dialogue with your team to make sure that they always remember that, communication is key. And, nobody is basically, I haven't heard anybody basically complaining about over-communication. It's always about under-communication. If an investigator comes to me and says that, please, or an entrepreneur basically comes to me and says that, I'm tired of you guys because you talk too much to me, I'll be glad. So that is how it is.
That's great. Joanne, would you like to go ahead, or?
Well, I was going to say we've got a few minutes over, which is perfectly fine, and I see most of our audience is with us, so thank you very much for that. And I just think it's so perfect that you brought the circle back to the happy marriage. So congratulations, you're the most deft person at bringing the strings together at the end. I would like to, we can take a moment for each of you to have a final comment. Joy, would you like to go first?
Sure. Just once again, wanting to re-emphasize the fact that there's been a lot of myths and a lot of unknowns that some of the startups come to us with at the point in time when they want to acquire technology from us. And the myth that comes from the fact that I think there have been, things that we haven't quite covered very much. Are a lot of unsuccessful stories that also happen to be happening. And always the ones that eventually do not succeed tend to catch the eye of more than the ones that do succeed. It's just, I think, a rule of thumb and the nature, human nature that everybody gets with. So the one thing that I want to reemphasize, of course, is that technology transfer offices are evolving. They're learning with time. There is a lot of changes that has happened in the philosophy with which these offices have been working. For the most part, one very important thing that is beginning to happen with these offices is that they're trying to get mature, and they're trying to hire people that have experience working both in the corporate and the academic sector. Because one thing that we haven't talked much about here, and is something that is a subject of great discussion, is the cultural divide between the two organizations. The one being a profit-making, the other one being a not-for-profit making. And licensing is kind of in the middle of that. And so communications can go absolutely haywire when there isn't a general understanding of how the two entities operate with each other. Now, getting a marriage to happen under those circumstances is tough. But I think tech transfer offices have evolved. There's been a sea change that has happened in the past, and we, on behalf of most of the offices that are in this space, particularly from an academic university setup, we encourage startups to come over to us and talk to us and try and understand how we have changed in the last few years and how best we can assist in trying and developing your company. So there is help available, and then we are there to help you startup entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Manu, any final comments?
Sure. I differ a little bit with Joy. I apologize, Joy, with regards to the mission, because Joy comes from a certain mission of academia versus, like I mentioned, with regards to OMRF or the Mayo Clinic. It is entirely different. I see my operation in OMRF or when I was at Mayo Clinic as a for-profit operation for nonprofit cause. And so I see that because the Mayo Clinic tech transfer actually reported to finance, not to research. So, same thing here. I report to the president, but it's basically a financial operation that is geared towards making money to fund basic research, and so bottom line becomes very important. But having said that, it is extremely important, like Joy says, that you can only make money if both parties are, and if the other party is successful. So communication is key, and assistance is key, and also credibility is key. So one thing that I always try to tell is that try to build a win-win relationship and try to attain a marital bliss, as I call it. And by working together, and you have to understand that you are basically aligned in economic interest to make sure that, that both and try to make both parties win here. And in that process, there is a transactional component and there is actually a relationship component. Don't mix the transaction with the relationship, or vice versa, in the sense that you will mix it, but do not over mix it. It actually gets to become difficult to separate, because transaction is if it is fair, and your relationship is actually is made strong by a good, fair transaction, and only if that fair transaction it succeeds, you will be able to maintain that relationship. So communication, fairness is actually key with regards to a relationship, and keep that as the important aspect to making both parties win and become successful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Neha, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that thank you so much for the insights, because people like me who are thinking about careers in technology commercialization, even if you're doing already in an office, I think that every office is different. So it's so inspiring and interesting to hear from people from different offices and try to understand how the different mechanisms work. So thank you so much to both of you for taking out time for us and for this webinar and your slides preparation too. Thank you so much.
Well, terrific. And thank you, Neha. You've done a beautiful job putting this series together. Thank you, Dr. Goswami, Dr. Nair, Dr. Nigam, and thank you to our audience. We really appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.